Man, I really do like this thing. I've been cruising a bit. The thing with it is you gotta remember, like, the major things about creating a rover for a low gravity planet. You want the lowest center of gravity possible on your rover, which means you want your center of your weight, basically your weight distribution, as low as it can get, which means it won't be rolling over. Now, we decided to go with standard center of gravity, but have a roll cage, and that's definitely one way to go about it. But you do have to make sure when you're driving these rovers around on these planets that you're keeping it sub 10 meters a second when it's low gravity. Otherwise, they're prone to flip, and they're prone to destroy themselves. So just keep that in mind. We've learned that lesson back when we had the Magnus on Minmus. Minmus is obviously super low gravity, so you just gotta like compare it, right? This has a bit more gravity to it. This rover also has a bit more weight. So it's just one of those situations. But all of this brings me back to the point that it's been over a year back on Kerbal. Over a year. It took them longer than a year to get this sucker to Doona. As I slowly try to get myself to reduce my speed a bit. It took them longer than a year to get to Doona with this and then land it and now explore around for it. And this is the first time they're getting those images back to Kerbal. And you gotta imagine that's probably really exciting for people. I bet even the Naturians are super excited about the whole ordeal, because they're like, wow, we've actually never seen another planet before. This is the first time we're being able to witness on ground level of another planet. And it brings me all back to when the first rover landed on Mars. See, I was around for that. I was actually not only around, but I remember it pretty clearly. I remember my parents being super excited for the fact that we were sending a rover to Mars and that it was sending images back, and a lot of data was coming back for NASA. NASA was like really in on it, you know, they were super excited about all of the stuff that was happening. And I remember every adult that I knew at the time was also super excited. And because I was a bit of a sci-fi nerd, still am, spoilers, I was excited for it too, but I was excited for it in a different way. I was excited because everybody else seemed excited. I didn't really grasp what had happened until a couple of years later when I was a little bit older. But the first rover landed on Mars in 1997, which puts me, that was when I was about 10. I was born in 88, I'm 26 now. I was pretty close to 10, and I do remember it very clearly. I remember watching it, which was even cooler. Like I could imagine that's what it was like for people to watch, you know, the first moon landing, right? But there have been other landers to go to, or rovers to go to Mars since. You've had that was the Sojourner. So you've had the Spirit. That was like 2004. Obviously, you had the Curiosity, which was in a couple of years ago. There was also the Opportunity, and that's the last one. That was also 2004, I think. I think those are all the rovers. All right, I'm gonna park this sucker here. But you gotta imagine, like, for the Kerbals themselves, seeing Doona for the first time, all that hard work, they're probably very excited. And this whole thing is very beautiful. But it has been a year. It has been a year, and to continue to draw parallels between our world and theirs, they're ready to come to Doona, but there's steps that need to be taken in between now and then. And we got to figure out what exactly has happened this year back on Doona. So let's go back. I'm gonna quick save, and let's go back. Now, Jebediah, good old Jeb, and Bill and Jeb, I think is who they were. They're not dead. During this year, we found out that the shadows go crazy, apparently. Bill and Jeb aren't dead, though. We're good. We're fine on that. They were actually captured, not by Naturians, but by some weird, like, terrorist sect. And there was a whole thing with the government where they had to give up a ton of money to get their 2 pilots back, and Jeb and him were fine, right? They came back and they were like, actually, they treated us really well because we were teaching them about rocketry, and the people at the Space Center were like, what? You just taught them about rocketry? And they're like, don't worry about it. It was nothing advanced. We were appetizing their desire to know more knowledge in the meantime. And that was several months into this mission. So they've been back since then. However, they are working on a secret mission. They have now been completely moved on to the Aurora. Now, the Aurora is something new that we've developed in that year. And in fact, I would love to show it to you, but I have to switch to my test game. Now, this is the Aurora, and I teased it on Twitter about a week ago, but I did it as a blurry picture, so this is actually it up and close. This is our first ever carrier-style ship, and this thing is really, really, really big, right? This is bigger than any rocket we've ever made. In fact, it's heavier than any rocket we've ever made. And it's more expensive than anything we've ever made. $16 million. Look at that. 16 million and a half. Almost 17 million. Now it's crazy. It's got special technology on the back. You have these amazing reactors. You have these amazing propulsions. So this whole propulsion system goes on liquid fuel and oxidizer, but you can switch it to kind of like an ion system, right? Still uses a little bit of fuel and everything, but it switches to more of a hybrid system where it's using more electricity, so you're not using up all your fuel. These 3 bits in the middle, you see these 3 big pieces, they all hold fuel. They hold 113.7k units of fuel. To put that into perspective, this big fuel tank right here that we use, which looks very small in comparison, but it's the one that we put the big booster on, which would be that one, the one that we put this engine on, which again, in comparison, looks fairly small to the rest of it, right? It only has 6,480 units of liquid fuel. So this holds a lot of fuel, right? We also have a massive battery, 1.1 million units of electricity in there. There's all this stuff for RCS because RCS, but these are SAS reaction wheels. So it just basically in order to control the thing, so I don't have to use SAS to, or RCS rather, to control it while in space. It doesn't need to do that. It just uses these reaction wheels, which is really cool. It's got a lot of lighting on it, but more importantly, it has these 2 bays. Now, these bays can fit basically most things that I would want to put in it. Space planes, shuttles, maybe entire habitation systems that I will take to another planet and colonize it with, huh? It's got plenty of docking ports of different sizes and adapters for them, so that way I can put whatever I want in there when I want to dock them, or if I just want to clamp down an aircraft onto it, I can. It has plenty of space to carry Kerbals with. These hold 6 people in them, and there's 2 of them there. Then you have these 2 basic like cockpits. They don't really do too much. They're just observation and navigation. And then you have the main spot here. This is the bridge of the ship. And it has, up in the front, it has its communications. It's got more communications on the ship itself, but there's a science lab on the bottom, and that all points forward and just looks really rad. The bottom side is fairly basic, right? So this is the Aurora. This is our first massive ship that we're going to be putting into space. But as you've seen, it does cost $16 million in order to make it. So over the next week or so, I'm going to be doing a lot of the contracts to get our money up, because we're at like 1.5 million or something like that. I can get myself to 16 million by the next time we do a recording session of Project Destiny, but I'm going to have to put a lot of work in to do that. And then we're going to have to get this thing into space, which is an ordeal within itself. I've figured out how to do it, and I have tested it, and I have gotten it to work. But currently, my game is messed up, and I get the Kraken bug. As soon as I hit 6,000 meters in the atmosphere, everything just explodes. which is really annoying, as you can imagine. So I've put this off on doing that. So that, and I'm pretty sure that's just specifically with this craft and all of the HX pieces. See the HX2, like those are the big pieces. I'm pretty sure that's just what's causing that bug. All right, let's go back over to the Project Destiny save. It is just really cool to show you guys those kind of things, because I've been saying that I was working on that for quite some time, and in fact I live streamed some of my experimentations with the big HX parts before and that kind of stuff, but overall I've been working on that for a very long time, and to get one that is functional and works really well is really cool. And that's just the first one. I've got others down the pipeline here that we'll eventually use. However, I did want to just give you guys that little bit of taste so you can figure out what will be coming up as we go along. Now, there are things that need to be done in between now and then. The first of which is a space station, which I wasn't going to launch, and then I needed to. We need to launch this for many reasons, if I can even find it saved on here eventually. So it's a pretty big rocket, let's be honest. It's a really big rocket. It's got the two giant boosters on the bottom. It's got a big stage. It has like this middle stage and this big thing. And this is all just one giant space station that I'm going to launch into space. And you'll see it come together as we go up. But this is just, it's a necessity. It's a tribute, as I will say. And the whole idea of this space station, and you'll see it when we get it up into orbit, is, you know, it's kind of like what NASA has done recently. NASA recently did a study, and this is in 2015. It started in 2014. It ended in, I think, the beginning of 2015. So just to give you guys a time frame in case you're watching this in the future, NASA did a study where they allowed people to sign up for this, you know, thing where you would get $18,000 in the US for 70 days of work. And all you had to do was lay in bed, but you had to lay down for 70 days. You couldn't get up. You could talk to people, you can remain awake, you could play games and stuff, but you had to be laying down. And this was all to test the effects of what it would be like, you know, living in space for an extended amount of time, and then suddenly being exposed to gravity. Well, they can extrapolate the gravity part. We've had people live on the space station for a reasonable amount of time, but what they were showing is like a sudden effect of the blood rushing to the other parts of your body because of the effects of gravity. And some of these people that they have tested and that signed up, what they would do, actually every single one of them apparently blacked out when this happened, but they would slowly raise the bed so that it was vertical at the end of the 70 days, and all the blood would be rushing around because the person hasn't stood up in 70 days, and they would black out. Now, I think the effects are a bit different because they were awake as opposed to asleep. Like people who are coma patients, they don't necessarily go through like massive head rushes that I know of when they wake up and try to get up after 70 days, but they definitely have physical therapy that they need to go through. And it's all about the muscle decomposition over time, right? So that is really nice. Now this is set up for that, and let's get ready to launch it. So it's this whole idea of the space station is to observe the effects of living in space for an extended amount of time, because the Kerbals haven't gone anywhere except their two moons, so they don't know what that would be like. So we have to have a space station in order to observe these effects, and that's what we're going to do. I need to put my other Kerbals in there, and I have not yet, so let me go back.